Picture this. It's dawn on June 6, 1944. The beaches of Normandy are about to witness the largest amphibious invasion in human history. American soldiers grip their M1 Garand rifles with sweaty palms, hearts pounding like war drums as their landing craft slice through the cold Atlantic waters. Above them, the thunder of naval guns drowns out even their prayers. But what really won that day, what truly changed the course of the Second World War, wasn't just courage, it was firepower. Devastating, revolutionary firepower that the Axis powers never saw coming. Today, we're diving deep into the deadliest guns of World War II. The weapons that didn't just kill, they terrorized, they dominated, they won battles before the first shot was even fired. And at the heart of this story, American ingenuity, American firepower, and American heroes who wielded these instruments of war with skill that would become legendary. From the beaches of the Pacific to the hedgerows of France, from the deserts of North Africa to the frozen forests of Belgium, these weapons became extensions of American will, and they absolutely shook the battlefield. But here's what most people don't know. The story of World War II's deadliest guns isn't just about metal and mechanics. It's about the men who carried them, the split-second decisions, the moments when a single machine gunner held off an entire company, the times when superior American firepower turned certain defeat into stunning victory. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about how World War II was really won. Let's start with a weapon so revolutionary that General George Patton himself called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, the M1 Garand rifle. Now, you might be thinking, a rifle? How deadly could a rifle be in a war dominated by machine guns and tanks? But that's exactly where the genius of American military thinking comes into play. While other nations stuck with bolt-action rifles that required soldiers to manually work the action after every shot, American infantrymen had something that gave them a staggering advantage: a semi-automatic rifle that could fire as fast as you could pull the trigger. Think about what this meant on the battlefield. A German soldier with his Carabiner 98K bolt-action rifle could fire maybe 15 rounds per minute if he was well-trained and not under fire. An American GI with his M1 Garand? 40 to 50 rounds per minute. Easy. That's not just a difference, that's dominance. That's the difference between suppressing an enemy position and being pinned down yourself. The M1 Garand fired the powerful 30-06 Springfield cartridge, a round that could drop a man at 800 yards and punch through cover that would stop lesser weapons cold. But here's where it gets really interesting. The M1 wasn't just about raw firepower. It was about something the American military understood better than anyone else: reliability under the worst possible conditions. John Garand, a Canadian immigrant working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts, spent years perfecting his design. The result? A rifle that could be dragged through mud, soaked in salt water, frozen in a foxhole during the Battle of the Bulge, and still fire every single time you pulled the trigger. German soldiers who captured M1 Garands in battle often threw away their own rifles to use them instead. That's how good these weapons were. Let me paint you a picture of this weapon in action. It's October 1944 in the Hurtgen Forest along the German-Belgian border. Private First Class Harold Schultz is dug into a position with his squad, when suddenly, through the morning mist, they spot movement. German infantry, maybe 40 or 50 strong, advancing in a skirmish line. Schultz's squad leader gives the order: hold fire until they're close. The Germans keep coming. 200 yards, 150, 100 yards. Then, open fire! 8 M1 Garands erupt simultaneously. The distinctive ping as each 8-round clip ejects rings through the forest. But here's the thing, that sound that people love to criticize, claiming it told enemies you were empty, that was actually psychological warfare. German soldiers would hear multiple pings at different times and think entire squads were reloading, making them think twice about charging. And while they hesitated, American GIs were already slamming fresh clips into their Garands. The German attack melted away under that withering semi-automatic fire. Schultz's squad didn't just survive, they didn't even have to fall back. The superior rate of fire from the M1 Garand had turned a potentially overwhelming enemy advance into a turkey shoot. Over 5 million M1 Garands were produced during World War II. Every single American infantryman from Normandy to Okinawa carried one. And the impact? It fundamentally changed infantry combat. The Germans knew it. They feared it. Captured German officers admitted in interrogations that fighting American infantry was different from fighting British or Soviet troops because of the sheer volume of accurate fire American squads could generate. That was the M1 Garand. That was American innovation changing the face of war. But let's shift gears now, because if the M1 Garand was the reliable workhorse of American infantry, then the weapon we're about to discuss was the absolute terror of the battlefield, the Made Deuce, the Browning M2 50 caliber heavy machine gun. This wasn't just a gun. This was a force of nature that could shred light armor, shoot down aircraft, and turn enemy infantry into memories. John Moses Browning designed this monster, and when I say monster, I mean it literally. The M2 fired 50 BMG rounds, that's Browning machine gun rounds, half an inch in diameter, weighing nearly 2 ounces each, traveling at over 2,800 feet per second. To put that in perspective, these rounds could penetrate an inch of hardened steel armor at 200 yards. They could hit targets accurately at 2,000 yards, over a mile away. And when they hit a human being, the hydrostatic shock alone could be fatal even without a direct hit to vital organs. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about how World War II was really won. Let's start with a weapon so revolutionary that General George Patton himself called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, the M1 Garand rifle. Now, you might be thinking, a rifle? How deadly could a rifle be in a war dominated by machine guns and tanks? But that's exactly where the genius of American military thinking comes into play. While other nations stuck with bolt-action rifles that required soldiers to manually work the action after every shot, American infantrymen had something that gave them a staggering advantage: a semi-automatic rifle that could fire as fast as you could pull the trigger. Think about what this meant on the battlefield. A German soldier with his Carabiner 98K bolt-action rifle could fire maybe 15 rounds per minute if he was well-trained and not under fire. An American GI with his M1 Garand, 40 to 50 rounds per minute, easy. That's not just a difference, that's dominance. That's the difference between suppressing an enemy position and being pinned down yourself. The M1 Garand fired the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, a round that could drop a man at 800 yards and punch through cover that would stop lesser weapons cold. But here's where it gets really interesting. The M1 wasn't just about raw firepower. It was about something the American military understood better than anyone else: reliability under the worst possible conditions. John Garand, a Canadian immigrant working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts, spent years perfecting his design. The result? A rifle that could be dragged through mud, soaked in salt water, frozen in a foxhole during the Battle of the Bulge, and still fire every single time you pulled the trigger. German soldiers who captured M1 Garands in battle often threw away their own rifles to use them instead. That's how good these weapons were. Let me paint you a picture of this weapon in action. It's October 1944, in the Hurtgen Forest along the German-Belgian border. Private First Class Harold Schultz is dug into a position with his squad, when suddenly, through the morning mist, they spot movement. German infantry, maybe 40 or 50 strong, advancing in a skirmish line. Schultz's squad leader gives the order: hold fire until they're close. The Germans keep coming. 200 yards, 150, 100 yards. Then, open fire. 8 M1 Garands erupt simultaneously. The distinctive Ping, as each 8-round clip ejects, rings through the forest. But here's the thing, that sound that people love to criticize, claiming it told enemies you were empty, that was actually psychological warfare. German soldiers would hear multiple pings at different times and think entire squads were reloading, making them think twice about charging. And while they hesitated, American GIs were already slamming fresh clips into their Garands. The German attack melted away under that withering semi-automatic fire. Schultz's squad didn't just survive, they didn't even have to fall back. The superior rate of fire from the M1 Garand had turned a potentially overwhelming enemy advance into a turkey shoot. Over 5 million M1 Garands were produced during World War II. Every single American infantryman from Normandy to Okinawa carried one. And the impact? It fundamentally changed infantry combat. The Germans knew it, they feared it. Captured German officers admitted in interrogations that fighting American infantry was different from fighting British or Soviet troops because of the sheer volume of accurate fire American squads could generate. That was the M1 Garand. That was American innovation changing the face of war. But let's shift gears now, because if the M1 Garand was the reliable workhorse of American infantry, then the weapon we're about to discuss was the absolute terror of the battlefield, the Ma Deuce, the Browning M2 .50 caliber heavy machine gun. This wasn't just a gun, this was a force of nature that could shred light armor, shoot down aircraft, and turn enemy infantry into memories. John Moses Browning designed this monster, and when I say monster, I mean it literally. The M2 fired .50 BMG rounds, that's Browning machine gun rounds, half an inch in diameter, weighing nearly 2 ounces each, traveling at over 2,800 feet per second. To put that in perspective, these rounds could penetrate an inch of hardened steel armor at 200 yards. They could hit targets accurately at 2,000 yards, over a mile away. And when they hit a human being, the hydrostatic shock alone could be fatal, even without a direct hit to vital organs. The M2 was mounted on everything: jeeps, half-tracks, tanks, ships, aircraft, defensive positions. American ingenuity meant this single weapon platform could be adapted to virtually any combat role. In the Pacific Theater, Marine Corps gunners mounted Ma Deuces on Higgins boats during amphibious assaults, laying down suppressive fire on Japanese pillboxes as Marines charged the beaches. In Europe, tank commanders stood in their turrets behind .50 caliber machine guns, taking on everything from infantry to low-flying aircraft. The M2 became so effective, so reliable, and so devastating that it's still in service today, over 90 years after its invention. Think about that. A weapon designed in the 1920s is still considered one of the most effective heavy machine guns in the world. Let me take you to a specific moment that shows just how deadly the Ma Deuce could be in the right hands. It's February 1945, in the Philippines. Sergeant James L. Day, who would later receive the Medal of Honor for actions on Okinawa, is commanding an M2 position on a ridge overlooking a valley where Japanese forces are attempting to regroup after being pushed back by American advances. Day has about 300 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. That's it. No resupply coming until morning. And intelligence reports suggest a company-strength Japanese unit is moving through that valley. As darkness falls, Day spots them. Dozens of Japanese soldiers moving in column formation, thinking they're concealed by the jungle canopy and approaching night. Day waits. His finger hovers over the trigger. He knows that once he opens fire, he's committed. The Japanese will know exactly where he is. But he also knows something else. He knows the power of the weapon before him. At his signal, he opens fire. The M2 roars to life with that distinctive, heavy, methodical hammering sound. Chunk, 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 chunk. Tracer rounds light up the twilight like deadly fireflies. The effect is catastrophic. The .50 caliber rounds tear through trees, through cover, through bodies. Japanese soldiers scatter in panic, but there's nowhere to go. Day traverses left to right, then back again, making every round count. When he finally runs dry, the valley is silent, except for the ringing in his ears. The next morning, when American patrols move through the area, they count over 60 Japanese dead. 1 machine gun, 1 American soldier, 300 rounds. That was the Mod Deuce. That was American firepower superiority in its purest form. But here's something most people don't know about the M2. It wasn't just deadly, it was smart. The design incorporated quick-change barrels so gunners could swap out an overheated barrel in seconds and keep firing. It had adjustable headspace and timing, meaning armorers could fine-tune the weapon for maximum reliability and accuracy. Compare this to German heavy machine guns like the MG42, which yes, had an incredible rate of fire, but were mechanically complex, prone to jamming with dirty ammunition, and required extensive training to maintain. The M2? You could teach a soldier to operate and maintain it in a single afternoon. That's the difference between a good weapon and a great weapon. That's American engineering. Now, let's talk about something that combined firepower with mobility in a way that absolutely revolutionized warfare. The M4 Sherman tank's 75mm gun, and later the 76mm high-velocity variant. I know what you're thinking. The Sherman tank gets a bad rap. Critics point to its thin armor compared to German Panthers and Tigers. They talk about the Sherman's tendency to catch fire when hit, earning it the grim nickname Ronson, after the cigarette lighter that lights the first time every time. But here's what those critics miss. The Sherman's gun, combined with American tactical doctrine, made it one of the most successful tank weapon systems of the entire war. The 75mm M3 gun mounted on early Shermans could fire high-explosive rounds that devastated infantry and fortifications, armor-piercing rounds that could knock out most German tanks at combat ranges, and even white phosphorus shells for screening and anti-personnel work. When American tankers encountered the heavier German armor in 1944, the U.S. rapidly developed and fielded the 76mm high-velocity gun, which could penetrate the frontal armor of a Panther tank at 500 yards. But more than the gun itself, it was how Americans used it. American tank doctrine emphasized combined arms warfare. While a single Sherman might lose a duel with a Tiger tank, American forces never fought that way. They used artillery, air support, infantry, and multiple Shermans working together. And here's the kicker. American industrial might meant that for every Tiger Germany produced, America built dozens of Shermans. In the Battle of Aracourt in September 1944, American tankers destroyed over 200 German tanks, including the vaunted Panthers, while losing only 25 Shermans. That's an 8-to-1 kill ratio. How? Superior tactics, better crew training, and yes, guns that worked every single time. Picture this scene. It's December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last desperate gamble in the West. German panzer divisions have punched through American lines, creating chaos and confusion. At the town of Bastogne, American forces are surrounded. Among them is Lieutenant Colonel Crichton Abrams. Yes, the same Abrams that the modern M1 Abrams tank is named after, commanding a battalion of Sherman tanks. German Tiger and Panther tanks are prowling the snowy forests, picking off isolated American positions. Abrams knows his 75mm guns are outmatched in direct confrontation. So what does he do? He uses American ingenuity. Abrams deploys his Shermans in ambush positions, using the terrain to his advantage. He coordinates with artillery forward observers to suppress German infantry accompanying their tanks. And when the moment comes, his Shermans strike from multiple angles simultaneously, targeting the weaker side and rear armor of German tanks. The 75 guns roar, sending armor-piercing rounds into German armor at close range where they're most effective. Track wheels shatter, fuel tanks rupture, crews bail out of burning vehicles. Abrams' tactics, combined with the reliable, rapid-firing 75 guns of his Shermans, help hold Bastogne long enough for Patton's Third Army to break through and relieve the garrison. American gunnery, American tactics, American victory. But let's move from armor to something that defined close-quarters combat in World War II, the Thompson submachine gun, the Tommy gun, the Chicago typewriter. This weapon was already legendary before World War II even started, thanks to its infamous use by gangsters during Prohibition. But in the hands of American paratroopers, Rangers, and Marine Corps raiders, the Thompson became something else entirely. It became liberation. The Thompson fired 45 ACP rounds, the same powerful cartridge used in the M1911 pistol. This was crucial. While lighter, faster bullets might wound, the 45 ACP had stopping power. When you hit an enemy soldier with a .45 caliber slug, he went down and stayed down. The Thompson could fire these rounds at a rate of 600 to 700 rounds per minute. In the narrow streets of Italian towns, in the dense bocage hedgerows of Normandy, in the jungled tunnels of the Pacific, this weapon gave American soldiers an overwhelming advantage in close-range firefights. The Thompson wasn't just deadly, it was iconic. Every American soldier who landed at Normandy with the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions wanted a Thompson. Why? Because when you're clearing a German-occupied French farmhouse room by room, you don't want to be working the bolt on a rifle. You want to kick in that door and absolutely dominate the space with rapid firepower. The Thompson did that. The distinctive sound of a Thompson firing, that deep, rhythmic chattering, became the sound of American forces liberating Europe. Let me share a story that perfectly captures the Thompson's impact. It's September 1944, Operation Martin Garden, the ill-fated Allied attempt to seize bridges across the Rhine. American paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne Division dropped near Nijmegen in the Netherlands with the mission to capture the bridges before German forces can destroy them. Sergeant Roy Creek lands with his squad, Thompson in hand, and immediately comes under fire from German positions in nearby buildings. Creek's squad is pinned down. Mortar rounds are walking closer. They have minutes, maybe seconds, before they're wiped out. Creek makes a decision. He grabs his Thompson, shouts for covering fire, and charges directly at the German position. Think about that for a second. One man with a submachine gun charging a fortified position. But Creek knows something the Germans don't. He knows the psychological impact of that weapon. He sprays the windows with .45 caliber rounds, shattering glass, splintering wood, forcing German soldiers to duck. He reaches the building, kicks in the door, and clears 3 rooms in under 30 seconds. The Thompson roars. Empty. He slaps in a fresh stick magazine, 30 rounds, and keeps going. By the time his squad catches up, Creek has single-handedly neutralized the position. 8 German soldiers dead or wounded, the rest surrendered. 1 Thompson. 1 American soldier who understood that sometimes superior firepower and sheer audacity are all you need. The Thompson submachine gun represented something fundamental about American military philosophy in World War II. Aggressive, decisive action backed by overwhelming firepower. Yes, it was heavy. Yes, it was expensive to manufacture, but it worked, and when American soldiers needed it most, it never let them down. Now let's talk about a weapon that might surprise you because it wasn't carried by infantry, wasn't mounted on a tank, and wasn't used by Marines storming beaches. But it absolutely devastated Axis forces and changed the course of entire campaigns. The Norden bomb sight, combined with the .50 caliber machine guns of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and consolidated B-24 Liberator bombers. This combination turned American strategic bombing into the most destructive application of air power the world had ever seen. The Norden bombsight was a technological marvel, a classified piece of equipment so secret that bombardiers took an oath never to let it fall into enemy hands, even if that meant destroying it and themselves to keep it safe. This analog computer could calculate the bomb's trajectory, accounting for altitude, airspeed, wind direction, and drift, allowing American bombardiers to hit targets from over 20,000 feet with unprecedented accuracy. When you combine this with the massive bomb loads carried by B-17s and B-24 Liberators, you had a weapon system that could obliterate entire German industrial complexes, oil refineries, and military installations. But here's where the defensive armament comes in. German fighter pilots quickly learned that attacking American bomber formations was suicidal. Why? Because B-17 flying fortresses bristled with up to 13 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, dorsal turret, ball turret, waist positions, and tail. A formation of B-17s created interlocking fields of fire that could turn the sky into a death trap for enemy fighters. German pilots called it flying through flak, except this flak had precision aim and could track targets. The heavy bombers' guns weren't just defensive, they went on the offensive. American gunners became specialists, training to lead targets, calculate deflection angles, and fire in short, controlled bursts to conserve ammunition while maximizing hits. And their accuracy was devastating. During the Schweinfurt raids in 1943, American bomber formations shot down dozens of German fighters while pressing their attacks on ball-bearing factories critical to German war production. Yes, American losses were heavy too, but the strategic impact was undeniable. German fighter production suffered. Oil refineries went offline. Transportation networks collapsed. American bombers, protected by their 50 caliber gun batteries and guided by the Norden bombsight, struck at the heart of Nazi Germany's ability to wage war. Consider this moment from October 1943. Captain Robert Morgan, pilot of the famous B-17 Memphis Belle, is leading his bomber deep into German airspace, targeting aircraft factories. German FW-190 fighters swarm the formation like angry hornets. Morgan's ball turret gunner, Staff Sergeant Cecil Scott, tracks an FW-190 diving toward their bomber. The German pilot is good. He's coming in at an angle designed to avoid most defensive fire. But Scott anticipates, leads the target, and squeezes the trigger. His twin 50 caliber guns hammer out a stream of rounds. Tracers converge on the diving fighter. Pieces fly off the FW-190's wing. Smoke trails. The German fighter breaks off, spiraling downward. He doesn't celebrate. He's already tracking the next threat. That was typical for American bomber gunners. Cool, professional, deadly. The 50 caliber guns of America's heavy bombers shot down thousands of Axis aircraft, protecting the bombers that systematically destroyed Germany's capacity to fight. But we need to talk about the Pacific theater now, because while Europe saw conventional warfare on a massive scale, the Pacific became a laboratory for brutal, close-quarters combat where another weapon rose to prominence: the Browning automatic rifle, the BAR. This weapon was technically a light machine gun, but American squad tactics used it as something else: a squad automatic weapon that provided mobile, sustained fire support. The BAR fired the same .30-06 Springfield cartridge as the M1 Garand, but it could do so in fully automatic mode at 300 to 600 rounds per minute, depending on the selector switch position. It weighed nearly 20 pounds loaded, meaning it took a strong soldier to carry it effectively. But that weight brought stability and accuracy. A skilled BAR gunner could put controlled bursts on target at ranges where enemy machine guns would be spraying wildly. And in the Pacific, where Japanese forces used infiltration tactics, banzai charges, and prepared defensive positions, the bar became the cornerstone of American squad firepower. Japanese forces feared the bar. Imperial Japanese Army tactical manuals specifically instructed soldiers to identify and eliminate bar gunners first because they knew these weapons could break up attacks before they developed. Marine Corps and Army squads built their tactics around the bar. Riflemen would maneuver while the bar gunner provided covering fire, then the bar gunner would advance while riflemen covered. This fire and movement, this coordinated application of firepower, gave American forces a tremendous advantage in jungle fighting where visibility was measured in yards, not hundreds of yards. Picture Guadalcanal, August 1942, the first major American offensive in the Pacific. Marines have established a defensive perimeter around Henderson Field, the airstrip they captured from Japanese forces. Intelligence warns that a major Japanese counterattack is coming. It's nighttime. Private First Class Mitchell Page is commanding a machine gun section, but his position also includes 2 bar gunners. Around 3 a.m., the jungle erupts with screaming Japanese soldiers launching a banzai charge, hundreds of them, determined to overrun American positions in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Page's machine gun roars, cutting down the first wave. But there are so many. The machine gun jams, hot, fouled by mud and humidity. In that critical moment, his BAR gunners open fire. The heavy .30-06 rounds tear through the darkness. The sustained fire from the BARs gives Page time to clear his machine gun and get back into action. For hours, this small group of Marines holds their position against overwhelming numbers. When dawn finally breaks and the Japanese withdraw, there are over 100 enemy dead in front of Page's position. He would later receive the Medal of Honor, but he always credited his BAR gunners with saving the position. Those 20-pound weapons, firing as fast as the men could change magazines, had held the line when everything else failed. The BAR embodied American tactical thinking. Give your infantry squads organic, mobile firepower so they can win engagements without waiting for support. While other nations concentrated automatic weapons at the platoon or company level, American squads had a light machine gun in every single fire team. That multiplied American combat effectiveness exponentially. We need to discuss something that might seem mundane but was absolutely critical: the M1911 pistol and its .45 ACP cartridge. This wasn't primarily an infantry weapon, but for tankers, pilots, paratroopers, and officers, the M1911 was often the last line of defense, and it saved American lives countless times because of one simple fact: it never failed to stop a threat. John Browning designed the M1911 in response to a specific problem American forces faced in the Philippines during the Moro Rebellion. Soldiers armed with .38 caliber revolvers found that even when they shot charging enemy fighters multiple times, the attackers kept coming, high on drugs or religious fervor or both. The Army demanded a more powerful handgun. Browning delivered the M1911 in .45 ACP, and it worked. One shot would drop an attacker. 2 shots guaranteed it. The massive, slow-moving .45 caliber bullet transferred enormous energy, causing devastating wound channels and immediate incapacitation. In World War II, the M1911 became legendary. Paratroopers carried them during airborne assaults because they needed something reliable if they landed in the middle of enemy territory. Tank crews carried them because if their tank was hit and burning, a handgun was all they could grab while bailing out. Pilots carried them because if they were shot down behind enemy lines, a reliable sidearm might be the difference between escape and capture. And time after time, the M1911 performed. There's a story from the Philippines campaign in 1945 that perfectly illustrates this. Lieutenant Jack Knight's tank crew is advancing through dense jungle when a Japanese anti-tank round penetrates their Sherman's hull. The tank immediately catches fire. Knight orders bail out, and his crew scrambles through the hatches. But Japanese infantry were waiting in ambush. That's how they operated, hitting the tank, then attacking the crew. Knight's M1911 is the only weapon he has. 3 Japanese soldiers rush him with bayonets fixed. He fires twice. 2 soldiers drop. He fires again. The 3rd soldier falls. 4 rounds left in the magazine. He spots movement in the jungle. 2 more Japanese soldiers. Knight aims, controls his breathing, just like the range instructors taught him, and fires. Both threats eliminated. The M1911's reliability and stopping power saved his life and gave his crew time to retrieve weapons from the burning tank and establish a defensive position. The M1911 served American forces not just in World War II, but in every American conflict through the 1980s. Over 2.7 million were produced during World War II alone. It became so respected that Special Operations Forces still use modernized versions today. That's a 70-plus-year legacy of American weapons design excellence. Now let's bring this all together, because we've talked about individual weapons, but World War II wasn't won by single guns. It was won by systems of firepower working together under American tactical doctrine. And nowhere was this more evident than in the American Infantry Rifle Company's combined firepower. A typical American rifle company in 1944 had roughly 190 men, but the firepower they could generate was staggering. Every rifleman had an M1 Garand. Every squad had a BAR. The weapons platoon had 3 M1919 Browning medium machine guns and 3 60mm mortars. That's sustained, accurate fire across ranges from 50 yards to 2,000 yards. The company could call on attached .50 caliber machine guns, 81mm mortars, artillery support, air support, and armor. When an American rifle company attacked a position, they brought overwhelming firepower to bear from multiple directions simultaneously. German tactical doctrine in World War II was excellent, perhaps the best in the world at the operational level. But at the small unit level, American forces had advantages that German soldiers openly admitted. Captured Wehrmacht officers told interrogators that American infantry squads generated more firepower than equivalent German units, that American artillery support was faster and more accurate, that American supply lines kept troops fully equipped while German soldiers scrounged for ammunition. Those advantages came from American industrial might, yes, but also from American weapons design philosophy. Reliable, powerful, produced in quantities that ensured every soldier had the best tools possible. The impact of American firepower superiority extended beyond tactical victories. It shaped the entire strategic direction of the war. Germany had to divert resources to anti-aircraft defenses because of American strategic bombing. Japan couldn't mass forces for decisive counterattacks because American firepower would annihilate concentrated troop formations. Italian forces surrendered in large numbers when facing American units because they knew resistance was futile. American weapons didn't just win battles, they convinced enemies that fighting Americans was hopeless. Think about the broader implications here. The deadliest guns of World War II weren't just pieces of metal and mechanisms. They were force multipliers that allowed American soldiers to achieve objectives with fewer casualties, win battles against numerically superior enemies, and bring the war to a faster conclusion. Every M1 Garand that kept firing in a muddy foxhole saved American lives. Every .50 caliber machine gun that broke up an enemy attack meant American soldiers went home to their families. Every Thompson submachine gun that cleared a room in an occupied village meant one more town liberated. These weapons represented American values: innovation, reliability, effectiveness, and the will to win. The legacy of these weapons extends far beyond World War II. The M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun is still in frontline service across the U.S. military and with allies worldwide. The M1911 pistol inspired generations of handgun design. The lessons learned from the M1 Garand led directly to the M14 and eventually the M16 rifle. American weapons design in World War II established principles, reliability, stopping power, soldier-friendly operation that still guide military procurement today. But most importantly, these weapons were in the hands of American soldiers who knew how to use them. Training, doctrine, leadership, logistics, all of these combined with superior weapons to create a military force that liberated Europe, defeated Imperial Japan, and saved the world from tyranny. When we talk about the deadliest guns of World War II, we're really talking about American soldiers who wielded them with skill, courage, and determination. The guns were deadly, yes, but they were made truly devastating by the men who carried them into battle and used them to write history. So the next time you see a black and white photograph of a GI holding his M1 Garand, or a documentary showing B-17 gunners manning their .50 caliber positions, or a museum display of a Thompson submachine gun, remember, these weren't just weapons. They were the tools that American heroes used to defeat the greatest evil the world had ever seen. They shook the battlefield, they terrorized enemy forces, and they helped win the war that saved civilization itself. The deadliest guns of World War II were deadly not because of some abstract technical specification, but because Americans made them deadly through superior tactics, better training, and unmatched courage. That's the real story. That's why these weapons deserve to be remembered, studied, and honored. They represent the best of American innovation applied to the gravest crisis humanity has faced. And if you found this deep dive into World War II's deadliest weapons fascinating, if you learned something new about how American firepower shaped the war, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell because we're just getting started with untold stories of individual heroics, clever bluffs, and desperate gambits that changed the course of history. There are countless more stories of American soldiers using superior weapons and superior tactics to achieve the impossible. Next time, we'll be diving into another incredible tale from the Second World War that deserves to be told. Until then, remember the sacrifices made, honor the weapons that helped win the war, and never forget that freedom isn't free. It's won by brave Americans with the best tools humanity can forge. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.